Who's playing some GodFall? You playing some GodFall? I'm playing some GodFall. Hello everybody, this is Mike T. What do we have today? Well, last week I decided I wanted to make a build for Greatsword and Hammer. I know they are not very popular and they're not very meta at the moment, but I wanted to do something that didn't involve stacking crit, didn't involve using weak points, crit damage, surety, all these things that we know are awesome, and try something a little different. And I came up with this build, and I actually like it a lot. I call it the Void Knight. So the first thing that you're going to see is stats. Might and Spirit are on the heavy side. I split the difference between the two. Need that heavy might because you have to ramp this build up. Ramp up means get it to rampage before you start doing the good stuff. Now I used Spirit because this is a weapon damage heavy build. Now you may be looking at the critical hit and the ailment chance for curse since this is a curse build, but do not be fooled, it does apply curse quite well. Okay, and first up is Eye of the Unknown, a legendary Greatsword tower exclusive with a double primary. I love this sword. When I am ramped up, I am breaching all the time. I added critical hit chance because even though this is a curse ailment build, you do not want to forsake the crit hit chance. I gave myself 29% chance in total with just normal hits, and I need that because I need a little bit of survivability. My hits are adding over health. You will see that later in the augments. Next up is Visara, which is a very tactical choice for this build, being that it has high inflict ailment on it and it adds over health when you kill an enemy with weapon technique. Why is this important? I will show you a bit later, but it is fantastic as you are climbing the towers and as you are trying to afflict bosses and mini bosses with curse ailment. Next one is one of my flavor favorites. I like this one. It makes it feel so Dark Knight. You apply Mark of Leeching whenever you inflict curse. Awesome. I love seeing the Mark of Leeching HPs flow into my character. Very cool for a Void Knight style build. Next up is Sunsteel's Crest. Drain the enemy's strength whenever you hit a cursed enemy. Drained enemies deal less damage and your damage is increased for 20 seconds. This amulet is fantastic and it's cool. It adds more to the flavor of that Dark Knight. It's got some ramp up speed on it and we're focusing on that weapon technique and the charge speed. Added some critical hit damage to make it hit even harder. Pretty cool item right here. Moving on to the Eye of the Dragon. Whenever you defeat a cursed enemy, gain 219 over health and your over health no longer degenerates. On this item we added plenty of curse damage to cursed enemies, void damage, and the area resistance. Well, if you've climbed the tower and you've ever sat in any sort of shock pool or shock ball, you know why we want that resistance. It was a nice little addition to the stats that I had on that ring. Thank you, RNG. Chromatic Circle, plus 20% void damage. This is one of the generic rings that you can get anywhere. You have to enchant it up to the legendary status, but as you can see, it fits very well into this build. We got some additional Archon Fury damage, some damage to cursed enemies, and again, this build needs this. Weapon technique, charge speed. It is very handy. I wish I had a few more items with the charge speed in it since I don't have the Lion Talisman. Keeping in line with that Dark Void Knight build, we've got the Plague Pennant. Legendary Banner helps me to inflict ailments more, adds damage when I have ailments. So if I go into a party with other people that are causing different ailments, ooh, it's going to chop stuff up. It is going to just devour those mobs. Added some crit hit damage, crit hit chance. I don't use weak points, so that stat went to waste, and then we added a little bit more crit hit damage on top of that. Last but not least is the Obsidian Star. This is a void damage lifestone. 62% void damage, 14% void damage, another 7 to inflict curse, 57% damage to cursed enemies, and another 7 to inflict ailments. This thing is awesome, and it tops off this curse build so well. I love it. Okay, let's take a look at augments. So what was I doing here? I was focusing on void damage and weapon technique and generating the charge for the weapon techniques because they play a crucial role in this build, because it's hard to get through the bosses and get more life stones as you're trying to endure the fight without these big weapon technique swings that come with the weapons. On this one here, we have Force of Nature. Gain 6% weapon technique charge whenever you defeat an enemy. So as you're plowing through the mobs in the tower, you're gaining that charge. I added weapon technique damage and void damage to this one. Twilight Bloom, the epic augment. Now I only had a 48 one that did fairly well with this build, so I slapped that on there. I do realize the secondaries go to waste with the dual blades and the weak point, but I added some weapon technique damage to make up for it. In total, this augment adds 111 weapon technique damage. Next we go over here to Frostfire. 39% critical hit damage during Rampage, because this is a ramp up build, my friends. It is best to do the weapon techniques when you are in Rampage, when you are ramped up. I added some more weapon technique damage to this when I upgraded it. 40% weapon technique damage. Pretty nice for a blue augment. Paradise. Plus 23% weapon technique charge speed for 10 seconds whenever you perform a critical hit. Now see, this is why, well, one of the reasons why I didn't completely forsake critical hit on this is because there's too many builds, well, not too many builds, too many augments that help me to build up weapon charge that involve critical hit. So again, I did add a little bit of critical hit in there. And of course, I added weapon technique damage. A cool crisp 39% on this one. Next we got the Lion's Pride. Gain 59 overhealth whenever you defeat an enemy. Again, this is a augment specifically focused on climbing the tower. As you defeat the small mobs, you are getting ready for the big mobs. Added some void damage here, helped me get some of that ailment going, which again I'm fairly confident I have an understanding of. I will explain it to you very soon here. And the God Mode, Implaceable. Legendary augment. This augment makes the cake right here. This thing is what helps you to survive the boss fights. Invulnerable for 5 seconds whenever you use your life stone. Not only do you get to capitalize without fear when you use your life stone, but you get to capitalize on the damage because you don't have to back off because there's too much damage in front of you. You can just keep swinging for that 5 seconds. On this one here, we got some takedown damage, Arkham Fury damage, and then I added void damage as the optional. Now, you might be thinking, well, I guess the takedown damage went to waste. Not at all, my friends, not at all. You got to use Spectral Takedown. It is awesome, especially with these heavy-hitting weapons. It is fantastic. Moving over to Focus. This augment is in almost all of the builds that I play. I love it. Gain 72 overhealth whenever you perform a critical hit. Oh, there it is again. Can't forsake those critical hits. There's too many things we need to survive and keep on going. Added some weapon technique damage to this. Another cool crisp 39%. Force Barrier. I think that this augment is so underrated and underplayed. I absolutely love this. It makes you feel like a tank of a knight when you're playing the Void Knight, and I have some great resists on it too that help me to withstand some punishment. Now what happens with this, the primary, while above 50% overhealth, your attacks cannot be interrupted. What you will see as you are playing is when you are at 50% over health, the damage shows up as 0. What that means is that should have knocked you down, but it didn't. Your health still drops, or your overhealth still drops, but it doesn't knock you down, so you can just plow through mobs like an unstoppable force. It is awesome. What else do we got? We got Black Seed. Now, what we have here is whenever you defeat an enemy with a weapon technique, gain 10% shield charge, and the next shield ability does 58% more damage. The shield is so clutch and helpful for getting rid of small mobs and getting situations under control in the tower. It's also nice when you're fighting one of the bosses to just have a ranged attack every once in a while. On this one, I added 31% damage to cursed enemies and 83 vitality. Now you might be thinking, why didn't I add more cursed damage to this augment? Well, the short answer is I couldn't. It wasn't an option, and this build is not tanky enough, so I added more vitality. Okay, let's take a look at the skills. There's only a few skills that I would call required in this build. Those would be weapon techniques, rampage, ailments, and takedowns, and of course the 1 point in finesse. The rest you can finagle however you want. It does not matter that much. However, I would recommend not sacrificing the crit hit chance if you're following the same path I am. Okay, let's talk some boss fighting strategy before we get into the tower climbing. So with a boss, the ailment is my biggest multiplier on damage, and what you want to do is you want to drop that banner as soon as possible. The banner is going to add that ailment. You're going to want to hit it with the 2 ready hammer weapon techniques that are on the weapon. This will almost always apply the curse. If not, give it a 3rd or 4th weapon technique hit and your curse will eventually be there with that damage. Once the curse is on there and you're in rampage, it's time to go to town. Use your life stones to stay alive and to DPS. At this point, it is a race between you and the boss and who can stay alive longest. Alright, let's talk tower climbing now. Now, tower climbing is a bit different of a dynamic here, but it's still pretty easy with this setup. What you want to do, instead of just going for that initial curse, is you want to start using the Visara hammer and killing the small mobs first to build up that overhealth. You will get somewhere between 400 and 600 overhealth for each small mob that you kill, depending on how well you play and whether the mob dies cursed or not. Don't worry too much about whether it's cursed or not. Worry about not losing the health that you're trying to gain. Once you come up against some of those mid bosses in the tower, just revert back to the original boss strategy that we spoke about a few moments ago, and voila, that is how you use this build. It is very fun to play. I urge you, if you have the equipment to make this build, give it a shot. It is very fun, and I am going to leave you with a Macross fight. It is a one-shot on hard mode, the level 60 map. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching, and until next time, goodbye.